All right, so another day. I am recording earlier. I got some rest, so I feel better. My voice should be better. And I think I have the mic adjusted properly because that was an issue. It's all a learning thing. So today I am going to talk about a video, and I don't even know if showing other people's videos, people do that all the time, so I don't think it's a big issue. But I want to talk about a video that I came across um, with that features Tyler the Creator, him talking about fears, creativity, stuff. So let me just say, I highly respect Tyler the Creator as an artist. I think his approach is amazing. I think he represents um, a specific type of artist that is able to kind of balance the act of creation and what that can take, um, with kind of maintaining a positive outlook. Now, that being said, I don't know the man, I don't know his life, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but from the outside and what I've seen, it seems like that's the case. I, I several years ago, I went on a Tyler the Creator deep dive because it was just like I saw some fans of his talking about him, and I was just like, they are like rabid fans. Like they really are into him, and I'm like, what makes him so special? Um, and so I did go down a Tyler the Creator rabbit hole. And one of the things about him being such a young artist, and I guess it's true of most artists that are kind of coming up in this internet age. I am 50, so it's different for my generation. Is that his early work is mostly available, it seems, on YouTube. Like, I went down a rabbit hole and I feel like I saw stuff that he did when he was in high school. And he, even in this piece, suggests that a lot of, he got famous off stuff he was doing in 18, 19, 20. And it creative, as sometimes, like, it wasn't to my particular taste, some of the choices. Um, but I appreciated his boldness, and his willingness to try out different things. And then, later, some of his music, some of his lyrics are outstanding. I can't, it's not top of mind right now, but I just remember once I was just like, wow, yeah, that works. So, um, I am someone who appreciates him absolutely as an artist, and he does so many different things now. So I was happy to watch this, but I also wanted to like kind of give some feedback. So this content right here, and I suspect that my 30 days will get deleted once the 30 days are over, but I want to be a person of my word and show up. And right now, this is how I can show up. I'm not on camera. I'm not um, focused specifically on the business because I'm trying to solidify my offers this week, which should be done at the end of the week, and then I'll be talking about that in more context. And actually, watching this video helped me think about that in a great deal, a little bit differently. So, first, I want to talk about fear. And then I want to talk about something he said, which is one of my favorite things I've heard in a bit. So let's talk about let's talk about fear. So I'm just gonna play the piece of it, and just editorialize as I go on and give uh, personal references. Um, there's one thing I should say, because again, I'm filing the stuff that I'm doing right now under the, when you're trying to build a business or you're in sales, they say, well, people only buy from that they know, like, and trust. I don't think that's true at all, because, and I'm not even going to go into that, but people, I think it's a great idea to kind of um, think of it that way. So this is an opportunity for you to know me. I don't know if you're going to like me or not. I'm not as worried about that And I don't know if you're going to trust me based on what I tell you. Maybe, maybe not. Again, that's your choice. I'm not particular about that. But I am filing this content under the opportunity to get to know me a little bit better. So one of the things I should say is that I don't identify as an artist. But I may, similar to the last video I did, I might be one. And I had thought about this a little bit earlier because an artist was the first thing that I wanted to be when I was a kid. So my dad, I was probably like 4, 5, 6. I think less than 6, because 6 is when my brother came along, and I don't think he was alive then. My dad made my sister and I an easel, like straight up, like got 2x4s and like cut them down, and like I remember the wing bolts that he used to put it together. And it had 2 sides so we could paint at the same time. It had these little carriers. It was fabulous. And I loved to be on the patio. At that time, it was all watercolors, and I was all about it. I would paint the dog, I would paint the trees, I would try and paint my parents, and that I just got so much joy of it. And I do remember I was probably older, because maybe about 8, like I could draw some things, and I remember telling my mom I wanted to be an artist, and she was like, yeah, that's nice, but no, you're not going to be an artist. Like, she legit was like, that's not happening. And I was like, she said, you know, artists don't make any money. That's not the kind of life that you want to have. So that's not happening. So that was that. My world, I started playing violin when I was 5, and so even when I was like 8 and 9, I could win competitions and things like that. Even with like being good at that, it wasn't kind of like okay for me to be a musician, and part of that was because I was good at math at a really young age, and it was just like, oh, you're good at math, that means that you're going to become one of the things that people who are good at math do. And I understand that, especially in the context of the times. It's interesting, though, as terms of art. Like, I like to paint. It turns out my mom was I remember her taking quite a few art classes when I was a kid. And my mom's mom, especially later in her life, took art classes. She actually won a couple of awards from her art later in life. So the lineage is there, but choosing it as a profession never was an option. And so I revisit this because what's becoming clear to me is that the artistic side of myself is absolutely demanding representation in my business. And I've been fighting for months about that. And so this video is helping with that. And then, yeah, I'll just talk about it in that context. I feel like there was one other thing I wanted to say, but no, I think that's it. I mean, props to my dad for building an easel. That was really a cool thing to do. All right. So I just want to play this part. Oh, we're still on the black screen. So let's put up this video. So I'm just going to start it at some point and then end it at a certain point, and I'll just pause and talk about it.
He goes by the name of Tyler. Yeah, okay.
What's up, y'all?
If you're not familiar with his work, I think you should get familiar with his work. I actually I don't know what he's doing these days. I would say the last time I checked out something he did, I think he performed at some award show. I don't remember which one, but that's what prompted me to kind of dig deep. But definitely worth some time.
Before you got here, we were having a conversation about fears as a creative, things that hold ourselves back, and things that we could possibly get to the next stratosphere if we were not hung up on XYZ thing. before you guys came back, him and I were having a conversation about, in short, if he is as confident as he comes off. Right? And I'd asked that because I was kind of joking, like, are you always like this? Like, do you ever have any fears? Do you ever have any jitters? Do you ever have any anxieties? And what was your answer?
For the most part, no.
Is that true?
What'd you ask?
I'm like, that can't be possible. Seriously.
And she said that, and I said, she's saying that from the floor in the building that she sits on because she's probably in her floor surrounded by everything that's mentioned. Where on my floor, if it is some, it's dust in the corner. I don't work from that realm. Cause she was like, do you have the jitters right now? Are you nervous? And I'm like, why the would I be? Nobody here has a gun, so what am I gonna be nervous about?
Okay, so nobody has a gun, but still, like, when has there been a time where you looked at your creative work and you felt cringe about it? Have you ever experienced the cringe?
So I'm going to pause right there because I think he makes a good point, but because I remember his early work, I think there's a reason why he is able to appear. He may be fearless. Some people are. But what makes it easier for him to be fearless, and I think part of it is he doesn't give an F about what anybody else thinks. And I remember seeing that in his work at, when he was a young kid, where he was willing to engage with people, and fortunately, respectfully enough, where I don't think he ever got punched or anything like that, but he was willing to engage with people, and not care what the result was. It was like a weird kind of improv on the street kind of experience. And I think that is where, like, if you are a person who shuts off all external critique, it's easier. It may not be easy, but it's definitely easier not to have fear because those inputs are not the issue. So a lot of people's fear comes from the idea, like they say that our biggest fear is to be outcast from the tribe, which is like a survival mechanism required for most people to, survive. Like when you were in a tribal situation, it's very hard to like hunt, gather, and do all the things you need to do to stay alive by yourself. So like being an outcast is absolutely related to the idea that you will not survive. So like inside of us, that is usually the number one fear, which is why like public speaking, all these things that are like people are outwardly fearful of is because it's a really strong, weird, ingrained idea that if these people don't like me and they choose to outcast me, that I will not survive. And so if you cut that off, like if you don't believe that to be true, then yeah, that part doesn't really impact you at all. And this is what's interesting when the part where he talks about the cringe, which makes me think my theory has some validity.
No, even my old stuff that I'm like not, because I got famous off of my teenage rough drafts. So like I got on at 18, and this is just us around, talented, but like, you say crazy to make your friends laugh and this and that. And that's what propelled my career. So even looking back at that stuff, while I'm not there with who I am today, I know that's where I was, and I meant it, and that was like me at that time. And I'm like, oh, that's cute. It's like looking at your early drawings or whatever, and I don't cringe at it. And even if it's something like, I don't like it, I don't want to listen to it, I still have the same amount of love for it because I know what it is and what it meant at the time. I think the thing is, I'm such a fan of myself and almost so full of myself. And I think in a positive way that like, I'm not judging myself as a critic who doesn't know me way. I know that I want to get better at what I do. I'm a true student of the game for whatever medium I'm in, and I enjoy what I do so much that I can't even look at it in a negative light because it brings me so much joy.
So yeah, that's absolutely true. I think that's wonderful, but this is the part where he talks about starting to feel it a little bit.
What's the part?
It was so silent.
what you were saying, like, because that's interesting. When was the last time you felt self-conscious? Because this is human. Even if you're a fan of yourself, even
I'm
if
not
you like
saying
your
that
work.
I don't feel ways like that, but I think it's through different filters. So let me give you an example. Oh, okay. I don't know if this is gonna answer. So, all right, I just got off on tour. I leave tomorrow for the European leg, and on my tour, I have a crazy hair and this like army suit or whatever, and these big shoulders, and I do weird movements, and it's ill. It's ill. And we're in one city. I forgot what show it was, but the energy was just dead. It just wasn't a show giving me back what I was used to.
The audience.
Yeah, the audience.
Yeah.
And I'm up there and I'm like, man, I can't wait till this show is over. And then it got to a point where I'm like, damn, I'm really on this stage, dressed like, man, I look dumb as Why didn't none of my tell me not to do this? Oh, this is terrible. Well, I like it. And then I actually get weirder. Then the movements just actually, I'm like, I'm here. And then I just actually do more to just make it look worse, if that makes sense. And that's probably that was probably like 3 weeks ago. But I look at it as a positive because I kind of like uncomfortableness, like you said.
Yeah. Is there any time where
So that's kind of my point, that for him, the external factors, the fact that he's in front of an audience, there's an awareness, but it doesn't actually dictate his choices until he feels uncomfortable, and then he actually doubles down, which is a great thing. But sorry, I had to let the dog in. But there's another piece of it, and I think I don't mean to like gender this, but I'm gonna put it in a like in the spiritual perspective of a masculine feminine space. Whereas for a masculine space, a masculine energy, it is to put out. Like the whole idea of the masculine is to just put out, show, force, movement, go forward. The feminine is actually to ingest and bring in and be pregnant with and to exchange. And so this is not in any way to shame or demean his approach or why it works for him or anything like that. But it is, when I watched it, I was like, oh, that's a fundamental difference between people who are using a masculine approach, and women absolutely can and often do in the way our society is set up right now. That is the one that's rewarded the most, so that's what a lot of people do. But I believe that we are moving into a more feminine, at least sensitive, if not true awareness of the need for balance. And so there's been an increase in the need for a feminine approach. And so I'm going to play another clip that I think will underscore what I'm trying to say about fear. So this young man, let me see if I get the right.
It took me much.
Let me see. I did. Yeah, what this young man has to say.
And I guess that's easy to say now that I hit whatever I'm comparing that to, but
Not this part.
sometimes it takes a week, sometimes it takes 5 years. At that point, it just depends on the person.
I was thinking about your question with fear. Because my fear is not so much external or like the confidence in things. Like I know I'm capable of what I can do because I trained for it. But I have sickle cell, so it's a blood disorder if you don't know too much about it. But like it causes you pain and like it messes with the body. And my art form is like based on movement. It's based on what I could do physically. Like you can only do so much at certain points. Like I was just wondering, like, is there like been a phase where you can't, like, say you have like a sore throat or something, you can't like necessarily perform or create using your medium, like you want to make music. I can't do that right now because of like I'm sick, I got the flu or something. Just in that context, because I know I can't do it till like I'm 80, but I know I have a certain amount of time to put out or just create like what's given to me in that time frame. So I was just wondering about that, because I was thinking about like, if I went to dinner with my fears, they'd be like, I kept you safe, like a lot of your whole life, basically, because I was not playing football because I have a disease. I was not playing basketball because I have a disease. I chose something I could do where I don't need to be in contact, but it still pushes my body in a certain way. So it would say I kept you safe, but like, it's like, I don't want you to hold me back. And like, I know it's like a time frame of doing that. So I was just wondering that.
So the concept that fear kept him safe, which is, I think there's a whole book on fear as a tool. I forget the name of the book. But this idea of fear keeping you safe, I think is something that's very familiar to women, very familiar to people of color, very familiar to any marginalized community, no matter, what their physical characteristics are. And that's part of what fear is for. Like, it is a signal to let you know everything's not all right, and you may have to take some kind of action. What you decide that action to be is up to you. Sometimes it's super automatic. But that is, fear is absolutely a tool. And so I feel like, and when you think about ways to deal with fears, I'm not a big fan of like numbing emotions. I think it does take time and a lot of work to learn what they are and how they can be helpful to you. And I think that's a practice that should be like forefront in what schools teach. That's a whole nother discussion. But in this context, I feel really strongly that we have to start talking about fear in the context of what it means to be safe, and in the context of what do you do when you're doing a feminine approach to handling fear. So that's just my 2 cents on that. There's one more piece that I want to show, because it's, he said something, Tyler said something that is one of my favorite things I've heard in some time. And it really is helping me frame, I'm working on like solidifying these offers, and it's really helping me make more sense of why it's been such a struggle. And people are quick to say, oh, you're scared of it, or you're fearful, or whatever. And I mean, that's part of it. But I also have dealt with extreme levels of fear in my life, and I have a pretty good understanding of how to navigate that. So I don't know if that's truly the thing that hampers my progress. But I will say I can overthink. There's no doubt about that. But I also understand the importance of rhythm. And as someone who likes things when they want it, how they want it, at the time that they want it, it just feels like my life consistently the lesson of divine timing. I practice it so often. But let me just play this one part. Let's see if I got the right part. I talked all
freedom
this
and,
time.
like be able to
Yeah,
work.
it's just that awareness thing is super, super important. I have a thing where I'm like, create like a child and just edit like a scientist. Like, that right there, I think, has solved so many things from like, when I make songs, it'll be freaking so many versions because I'll put all the ideas out, just all of them. I'm not trying to be good or great or bad. I'm just putting it there. And over months, over a year or 2 years, I edit that song to make it the best version that it could be.
So there's a little bit he says at the end about this as well.
World, a design, whatever, with like
All the time.
this
Intention,
yeah.
intention and feeling is always first.
Yeah.
That's why I say I create like a child.
Right.
Like they don't even, for the most part, know how to articulate in the way that us adults do. They just go off straight up feeling and emotion and like their intention is that feeling emotion and like that's how I make things. There'll be some records where or some songs where I'm like, oh, this is specifically for this environment. So if it doesn't work in this environment, that's okay because it was made for X, Y, and Z. And depending on what you go into like that, like if your goal is to make folks feel good, and you go in there and it's 5 folks and you put a smile on 2 of those, you check that off, so yeah.
I mean, it is a wonderful piece of personal permission to like just show up and keep throwing it out there and moving in that direction. And I love that. I also love that it absolutely honors the 2 sides of myself, which is, I would say, intuitive, artsy, as opposed to childlike, but that's a fair thing to think. And then scientific, which I'm very much trained to be. And so it was such a nice thing to hear, and a wonderful thing to think about and take to the work that I'm trying to finish this afternoon, which brings me to why this video has to end. So this is a little bit more about me and also the amazing kind of approach that Tyler, the creator, uses to kind of overcome fear in his creative process. I appreciate that. And yeah, the dog is having a moment. So I'm going to go figure out what that moment is about, and I am going to get back to my work. So I am considering it a win, 1, that I am recording this not when I'm dead tired, and 2, that I actually had some sort of plan. All right. Thanks for listening.